So if you woke up tomorrow in a brand new body, in a completely new world, would you actually be a different person?
Oh, I mean, most of us definitely like to think we would.
Right, we think a clean slate just, fixes everything.
Exactly.
But the deep dive we're getting into today argues something that's honestly a little terrifying.
Yeah, it really is.
It argues that a new world doesn't actually change you. Your old viruses just kind of, well, they infect the new hard drive.
It is a really harsh reality check, but a deeply fascinating one.
Mm.
Because, we are so obsessed with this idea of the geographical cure.
Oh, the geographical cure. Like if I just move to a new city.
Right, if I get a new job, or, I mean, even if I just buy the right planner for the new year, I will magically become this idealized version of myself.
Yeah, but then January rolls around and the gym memberships go completely unused.
Exactly. The planners just gather dust, and those old habits inevitably creep right back in.
Which is exactly why today's exploration is so incredibly relevant for all of you listening. We are looking at a stack of really insightful analyses that tackle this exact problem.
And they pull this from a pretty surprising source, right?
Yeah, they extract this real-world psychology from a very unexpected place, an anime called Mushoku Tensei, Jobless Reincarnation.
Right.
And look, whether you are a massive fan of anime or someone who has literally never watched a single episode, the mission for our deep dive today is to break down the universal human psychology at the core of this story.
Because the core question is so compelling. Can a person truly change, or are we all just doomed to repeat the same patterns in, slightly different fonts?
Yeah. So to answer that, we really have to look at the anatomy of human habits. The narrative uses its protagonist, a character named Rudeus, as this ultimate psychological case study.
And it's important to note, this isn't one of those stories where a flawless hero gets transported to a fantasy land and just effortlessly saves the day.
Not at all.
Before this character is reincarnated, his life is entirely defined by just crushing, paralyzing regret. He was a 34-year-old shut-in.
Wow.
Yeah, he felt entirely powerless, achieved absolutely none of his goals, and he just carried this immense burden of emotional baggage.
There is one detail in the sources that really anchors just how broken he was. He couldn't even bring himself to attend his own parents' funeral.
Yeah, that part is brutal.
It is. I mean, that is a staggering level of shame and paralysis to live with. It's not just a bad habit, It is a fundamental collapse of self-worth.
And that total collapse is exactly what makes the premise so interesting to analyze. Because when he wakes up in this new magical life, he's given a new body and an entirely new environment.
A literal clean slate.
Right. But there's a crucial catch. He retains all of his past memories.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and because his brain still holds the data of his previous 34 years of failure, he doesn't magically transform.
He's still him.
Exactly. He is still terrified of the outside world. He still defaults to extreme laziness. The trauma keeps him quite literally trapped inside his new home.
Because physical location doesn't rewrite your neural pathways.
No, it doesn't.
In so many of these stories, a second chance is treated like a magic software update that just patches all your emotional bugs.
Right, like a quick fix.
But reading through these psychological breakdowns, it feels a lot more like taking a virus-filled, totally corrupted hard drive and just plugging it into a sleek, brand new computer case.
That is a perfect way to put it.
The hardware looks amazing, but the second you boot it up, the old programming is still running. The fear of failure, the desperate need for comfort zones, they just hitch a ride in your consciousness.
That analogy perfectly captures the mechanism of identity. Because, our self-image isn't based on where we are. It is anchored entirely in the empirical evidence of our past.
The data of who we've been.
Exactly. Your brain is basically a prediction machine. It looks at your past behavior to predict what you will do next.
Mm-hmm.
So if your brain has 34 years of data saying, hey, we hide when things get difficult, dropping you into a magical fantasy world doesn't change that prediction model.
The brain still screams, hide!
Right. The corrupted code just keeps crashing the system in the exact same way.
Which brings us to the million-dollar question for everyone listening to this right now. If a shiny new environment or a brand new start doesn't actually overwrite that internal programming, how do people ever change?
It's the ultimate question.
Because if the old code is that stubborn, it sounds like we are all just completely out of luck.
Well, that is the turning point of the entire analysis.
Uh,
Overwriting your internal programming is not some cinematic overnight revelation.
yeah.
It is an excruciatingly gradual, deeply uncomfortable, and just relentless process. And surprisingly, it begins with doing the exact opposite of what modern self-help usually tells us to do with our past.
Wait, you mean the whole let go of your regrets and move on advice?
Exactly that. We are constantly told to just leave the past in the past. But Rudeus doesn't do that. He takes the agonizing memories of his wasted life, especially the shame of missing that funeral we talked about, and he basically weaponizes them.
Weaponizes them.
How?
He doesn't wallow in the regret. He uses it as raw objective data. He treats his past failures as a strategic blueprint of exactly what not to do.
I mean, I love the pragmatism of that, but I have to interrupt because that sounds incredibly difficult in practice.
Oh, absolutely.
Regret is so heavy, it's emotional. When I think about my biggest embarrassments or the opportunities I've blown, my instinct is to immediately distract myself so I don't feel terrible.
Yeah, that's human nature.
So how does a person systematically log their deepest regrets as data without just sinking into a profound depression?
It requires a massive shift in cognitive detachment, and the story actually illustrates this beautifully.
Okay.
So in his past life, he had this very minor skill. He was decent at using a computer, but he allowed that tiny advantage to breed this toxic, elitist attitude.
Ah, I see. He looked down on everyone else, which ultimately isolated and ruined him. And he recognizes that arrogance was the specific mechanism of his downfall.
He let a tiny bit of superiority become a massive defense mechanism.
Precisely. So in his new life, when he discovers he actually possesses an immense, like, 1 in a million magical talent, his natural instinct would be to let his ego explode all over again.
Right, because he's finally special.
Exactly. But because he is treating his past as data, the warning lights flash in his head. He forces himself to artificially lower his own ego.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he repeatedly tells himself that his magical ability is just beginner's luck. He actively suppresses his arrogance because he knows exactly where that road leads.
So he is basically treating his own brain like a hostile witness.
That's a great way to put it.
He knows his natural inclination is to get cocky, so he puts these guardrails up. But wait, if he is constantly reminding himself of his flaws and artificially lowering his ego, doesn't that just lead to a different kind of paralysis? Like, how do you actually get anything done if you're constantly fighting your own nature?
Well, you adopt what the breakdown describes as an agile mindset. And this is where the psychology gets really applicable for all of us.
Okay, let's hear it.
He learns to act and experiment rapidly without waiting for perfect preparation. He constantly battles that lazy voice inside his head that says, hey, you practice for an hour, that's enough for today.
Oh, I know that voice very well.
We all do.
Yeah.
He forces the action before the overthinking can even set in.
Okay, I get the agile mindset in theory, just act, don't overthink. But human nature is stubbornly drawn back to comfort.
Sure.
The second I get a little praise for a new habit, my ego inflates, I feel like I've made it, and I get lazy. We start thinking, hey, maybe I am just special.
Right?
So how is he actually bypassing that ego trap to maintain relentless discipline when things start going well? Because that is exactly where every diet and new workout routine goes to die.
That is a very real hurdle. The moment we experience a tiny bit of success, our brain just wants to cash out and rest. The way to bypass that, and the strategy highlighted in the sources here, revolves around the psychological concept of reframing.
Reframing, okay.
Yeah, he fundamentally redefines the concept of failure, which in turn completely redefines success.
How so?
There's this brilliant moment where he actually ends up teaching his own mentor, a highly skilled mage named Roxy, about this exact concept.
Okay.
He explains to her that a failure is not a judgment on your worth. It isn't an endpoint. It is simply experience. It is pure data collection.
So if you bomb a presentation at work or you completely fail to stick to your budget for the month, you haven't inherently failed.
Right.
You've just successfully collected data on what specific triggers cause you to mess up.
Yes, exactly. Think about the neurology of this. When we view failure as a reflection of our identity, our brain's amygdala, the fear center, treats it like a literal physical threat.
Oh, wow.
It triggers a fight or flight response, which is why we freeze up or we just quit entirely.
Yeah.
But if you reframe failure simply as gathering data, you completely bypass the amygdala.
Because it's not a threat anymore.
Exactly. Trying and failing isn't a terrifying risk anymore. By removing the heavy emotional weight of failure, taking action becomes a sustainable daily habit rather than this massive, anxiety-inducing leap of faith.
That makes so much sense. If the stakes are just learning, then your brain doesn't need to protect you by making you lazy or arrogant.
Precise.
But, internal shifts like staying humble and reframing failure, that really is only half the battle.
Very true.
The true test of any personal transformation is what happens when that new mindset makes contact with the external world. We all love the cinematic myth of the overnight
Oh
success,
yeah, the dramatic training montage.
the inspiring music and everything, but we completely gloss over the years of messy, deeply uncomfortable effort it takes to actually change how we interact with other people.
And interpersonal relationships are where the old programming fights back the absolute hardest.
Hmm.
The analysis details how painstaking it was for him to rebuild his basic ability to just exist around other human beings.
Because in his previous life, his default defense mechanism for literally everything was
Yeah,
lying.
exactly. Whenever he felt threatened or insecure, he made cheap excuses. He told these small, convenient lies to just protect his fragile ego.
Right.
But over time, those small lies compounded, and they completely destroyed his credibility.
Wow.
Everyone saw through the fabrications, and he lost all respect.
So how does he fix that?
To break that specific cycle, he implements an incredibly uncomfortable new rule for himself. Whenever he makes a mistake, no matter how small, he forces himself to look the person directly in the eye and apologize sincerely.
No caveats. No, I'm sorry, but
None.
just a complete ownership of the failure. That is so applicable to modern professional life. Think about the workplace. Cheap excuses are a foolish policy that completely ruins trust.
Yeah, absolutely.
The colleague who just says, hey, I messed up the timeline, that's on me, here's how I will fix it, immediately earns so much more respect than the person who spins a 5-minute web of excuses about traffic and email servers.
It's entirely about breaking the cycle of defensive fabrication.
Yeah.
But what is equally important here is that even with these strict internal rules, the text makes it clear that sheer willpower isn't enough.
Really?
Yeah, he couldn't fully change on his own. Real, lasting change requires the right environment and, crucially, the right mentors.
Right, because despite his new mindset, he was still physically terrified to leave his own front yard. His past trauma was just too strong.
Exactly. And his family, despite loving him deeply, couldn't cure that trauma. In fact, their love often acted as an enabler. They accommodated his fears.
That happens so often.
It does. It took an outsider, his mentor, Roxy, who understood what it was like to be an isolated outcast herself, to gently but firmly pull him out of his shell. It highlights a really difficult truth. Sometimes the people who love us the most are too embedded in our old patterns to actually help us break them. They just expect us to be who we've always been.
That dynamic is fascinating, and it actually leads to a detail about his father, Paul, that completely blew my mind.
Oh, the separation.
Yes. At one point, Paul recognizes that a deeply toxic codependence is forming between Rudeus and his first real friend, Sylphiette. They're both so comfortable relying on each other that they are actively stunting each other's emotional growth.
They created a perfectly comfortable closed-loop bubble.
Exactly. So Paul does something that seems incredibly harsh. He forcefully, physically separates them. He essentially ships his son away.
Yeah, he forces the issue.
And that brutal separation made me wonder if forced separation is what it took for him to break his codependence. What does that mean for someone listening to this right now?
Tough question.
Can we ever truly transform if we stay stuck in the exact same environments, surrounded by the exact same friends or coworkers who reinforce our oldest, worst habits?
Well, if we look at the broader behavioral psychology highlighted in these analyses, the answer is definitively no.
Wow, definitively no.
Staying in a comfortable environment halts neuroplasticity. It leads to utter stagnation. True transformation often requires what the text refers to as crossing borders.
Both literally and metaphorically.
Yes, you have to willingly subject yourself to the profound discomfort of a new, unfamiliar environment. You have to put your brain into a state of necessary adaptation.
Right.
When you are in a completely foreign situation, your old routines and defense mechanisms simply aren't available to you anymore. You are literally forced to build new ones.
It's like the difference between trying to learn a new language by reading a textbook in your living room versus being dropped into the middle of a country where no one speaks a word of English.
Exactly.
The sheer discomfort of the environment becomes the engine of your change.
Precisely. The pain of the unfamiliar forces the new programming to finally overwrite the old hard drive.
Okay, let's bring all of these heavy philosophical concepts right down to the listener's daily life.
Let's do it.
How do we take the profound journey of a reincarnated wizard and practically apply it to our careers, our health, and our relationships today? Because the real beauty of this deep dive is how explicitly it bridges that gap.
It really does provide a very practical roadmap. So let's start with careers and recovering from professional mistakes.
Okay.
The most empowering takeaway here is Do not discard your past, no matter how useless or embarrassing it feels.
Which goes against every instinct we have to hide our failures on our resumes. We always try to bury the gaps.
We do. But the analysis points out that Rudeus took his quote-unquote useless past experiences, like hours spent grinding in video games, resource management, the hyper-analytical logic of a shut-in, and translated them into unique tactical weapons in his new life.
Okay, yeah.
The psychological principle is that there is no such thing as wasted experience.
That is a massive paradigm shift. We tend to view our careers as needing to be this perfectly straight upward trajectory.
Exactly, but it rarely is.
Right. But maybe that weird gap year or that failed startup that went bankrupt or even the years you spent managing a massive guild in an online game actually taught you how to optimize complex systems and manage chaotic personalities.
Exactly right.
It is entirely about how you translate the data.
Yes. Your weird, nonlinear background is your competitive advantage, if you frame it correctly.
Okay, what about relationships?
Moving into the realm of relationships, the core lesson extracted from the text is equally counterintuitive. Stop trying to be the strong, perfect person all the time.
That flies in the face of almost all conventional advice. We are constantly told to project strength and confidence.
We are, but there's a profound lesson he learns from his father. Paul teaches him that deliberately showing your weaknesses and actually allowing other people to protect and help you is a vital component of intimacy.
Oh, that makes sense.
If you are always the strong one, always the provider, always the one with the answers, you don't leave any room for the other person to meaningfully contribute to your life.
You essentially make them a spectator in the relationship rather than a partner. By showing vulnerability, you are signaling that you trust them enough to be flawed.
Exactly. It builds deep, structural, mutual trust. And tied directly to family and relationships is the concept of urgency. Remember, his ultimate defining regret from his past life was ignoring his parents and missing their funeral. The lesson translated here is visceral. Do not wait for someday to show gratitude.
Because someday is a luxury that literally no one is guaranteed. If you appreciate someone, you have to show them today.
Exactly. Now, regarding personal development and building confidence, there's a really crucial concept discussed: building self-esteem through small subjective wins.
What does a subjective win actually look like in practice?
It means you stop waiting for the external world to validate your growth.
Okay.
When Rudeus passes his very first magic exam, it isn't some world-saving epic achievement. Nobody throws him a parade. But the subjective, quiet, internal feeling of, I set a goal, I worked for it, and I achieved it, begins to literally heal the broken parts of his psyche.
It's the psychological equivalent of making your bed every single morning.
Yes, exactly.
The world doesn't care if your bed is made. But making it proves to your own brain that you are capable of executing a task. You build a foundation of self-efficacy, the deep internal belief that your actions actually matter.
You are laying down the neural pathways of self-trust, one tiny subjective victory at a time.
There's one more highly specific behavioral tactic mentioned in the breakdown that I have to highlight because I think it is brilliant.
Which one is that?
The text notes that he often mutters to himself to organize his thoughts when he is stuck on a problem.
Ah, yes.
But doing this out loud accidentally signals to the people around him that he is struggling, and it naturally invites them to offer help.
It's a fascinating, almost accidental social strategy.
It's a genius, real-world tactic. In a corporate job or when working on a collaborative team, nobody wants to raise their hand and say, hey, I have no idea what I'm doing, please help me, because it feels like admitting defeat.
Right. People hate looking incompetent.
Exactly. But thinking out loud isn't admitting defeat. If you just verbally narrate the problem you're trying to solve, it lowers the barrier for others. Someone will naturally chime in to solve the puzzle with you.
It's so true.
You invite collaboration without ever having to trigger your own insecurities.
It is a masterful way of utilizing your environment and the people around you without compromising your ego.
So, synthesizing this entire journey, we have the humility of treating regret as data, the amygdala bypass of reframing failure, the vulnerability of letting others help, and the necessity of shattering your comfort zone.
It's a comprehensive toolkit.
It really is. If a listener wants to genuinely start overwriting their own corrupted hard drive today, what is the ultimate non-negotiable first step the analysis points to?
The overarching consensus of the text is that the ultimate first step is acting with an acute, almost painful awareness of your limited time.
The ticking clock.
Yes. The window of opportunity, the prime time in your life where you have the physical energy, the mental elasticity, and the circumstances to radically reshape your trajectory, is stunningly short.
Wow.
The core directive is this: do not wait for the perfect conditions. Do not wait until you feel ready. Start running right now.
Just go.
Just go. Because the sharp, temporary pain of trying and failing is vastly, infinitely better than the dull, crushing, permanent regret of never having tried at all.
Wow. Okay, so to circle all the way back to the provocative question we started with, if you woke up tomorrow in a brand new body, in a brand new world, would you actually become a different person?
Based on the deep psychological mechanics we've explored today, the answer is no. Not automatically.
Yeah.
A new world, a new job, or a new year does not change you. You have to change you, and you just use the new environment as your testing ground.
Change is not a magical reset button. It isn't a geographical cure. It is the grueling, messy, deeply unglamorous process of taking your darkest regrets, staring your absolute worst habits in the face, and making the conscious choice to act differently in tiny, uncomfortable moments every single day.
It is the compounding interest of microscopic, courageous choices.
People rarely change overnight, but with enough of those small, uncomfortable choices, they can eventually become someone their past self would barely even recognize.
And that reality leaves us with one final, important question for you to mull over today.
What is it?
If true transformation means building upon your messy past rather than trying to magically erase it, what is one useless failure or painful regret in your own history that you could reframe right now as the exact strategic weapon you need for your future?
What an incredible thought to end on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning, keep growing, and we will catch you next time.